My name is Erica Locke. I'm the Senior Vice President at the Blackstone Charitable Foundation. I've been here for about 5 years. Prior to my role here, I was at a nonprofit called Echoing Green for almost 10 years, where I helped run the fellowship program for social entrepreneurs. Blackstone, at the foundation side where I sit, in general, we focus on career mobility. Blackstone is the world's largest alternative asset manager. We have over 230 portfolio companies, 12,000 real estate assets, employing over 700,000 individuals. Actually, through all of that, we are a massive employer, right? So part of that thought process of investing in strong businesses to build value for our investors, that's our business model. A huge driver of that is talent. Diverse teams make better business decisions. Talent is a key driver of company value. We believe in all of that on the firm side. And so on the foundation side, we mirror that with investing in talent development organizations, so workforce development. So what we've been doing is taking our model. Historically, our foundation was built on entrepreneurship, but really taking that idea of entrepreneurial skills. Entrepreneurship is less the outcome and more the tool, right? So if young people like you are taking entrepreneurship coursework or even just trying on entrepreneurship through a side hustle, you're learning a lot around growth mindset, your creativity, your critical thinking, your leadership. All of these things come along with the entrepreneurship or the startup process. But these are really key skills that any employer is looking for, right? So when we think about our work with the Launchpad program, which is what I oversee and part of my job here, is that we're helping young people get these entrepreneurial skills, get in front of career exposure opportunities like innovation sprints, internships, any ways to understand more about the industry. And then they're better off and prepared to go in front of the gatekeepers like, the HR and hiring managers to then get that full-time job or the internship, whatever it is. We also leverage the power of Blackstone to put our students into internships. This year, we placed 275 students into Blackstone, our portfolio companies and startups, because we know that paid internships really are transformative for young people. Our focus is on first generation and underrepresented students through this, and we partner with schools like HBCUs, HSIs, and other nonprofits that are helping feed some students into that pipeline.
What was your background like? What piqued your interest in things finance, marketing, and business?
When I was a kid, I was very close to my parents and worked alongside them actually in my mom's business. So I understood the power of hard work and also just entrepreneurship. My mom was an entrepreneur. My dad had the same job for 52 years before he ended up retiring. And I think that kind of blend of who they were influenced who I am today. And then my mom also was very active in the community. I was volunteering with her. I was very engaged with community engagement and community service. And so that was really part of my identity growing up, was being in the community and seeking out challenges and volunteering my time and what I could in terms of talent to support it. So going into my first job out of college was at MTV Networks. It was super cool for someone straight out of college. I worked in kind of like the advertising department within the entire company. So I was doing creative services and special events really for the corporate lens. And from that, I got a lot of exposure to the public responsibility and learned that there was a power in companies to do social impact, right? So how do you leverage the assets that we had at that time? It was media, right? The channels and all of the channels across MTV to engage our audiences and do good things for the world. And I think just marrying the idea of business and social good was relatively new actually in this entire industry. I took about 5 years into my job there that I decided to go back to grad school. I wanted to do an MBA, kind of get like the breadth of the business level, but also specifically around social enterprise. Researched a bunch of universities who were offering that and ended up going to Columbia, had a social enterprise major, and then found that there's this thing called social entrepreneurship. It's still entrepreneurship adjacent. It's in the world of social change, but also through the lens of entrepreneurship. So I went into looking for places like Echoing Green, where I ended up going. It was a great nonprofit who was taking a fellowship model towards social entrepreneurship. And I learned all about how to support people all over the world in all different industries. I stayed there almost 10 years and then moved over to Blackstone.
What is a fellowship model? What is a fellowship program? How can people benefit from that type of programming?
So the fellowship model, I think you kind of contrast it from more of like a true accelerator model where you're really investing in the person. Okay. And I think that's what drew me to it is that, entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, you talk about like the business and then the companies and the products, but it's actually the leader, right? Who's coming up with the idea, who's driving it, who's building it, all of the things, who's hiring the team that ends up growing the product or idea, whatever it is. And so at the very beginning, you have to invest in that leader. and particularly for young people who might not have the social support net of entrepreneurs in their family, right? And how do they get that near peer benefit of fellowship, who have other people who are doing the same thing in the same spot as you, or people who've done it 2 years out and you can learn from their mistakes. So part of what we did was actually built a community more so than just like really individually investing in them.
I'm curious to know, I'm assuming you do similar work at Blackstone now with a fellowship model and empowering young people and just really cultivating the next generation of leaders. What are some challenges that you've encountered in that space and how have you overcome them?
The challenge in really all work is the competing priorities of importance and urgency. If you want to think about it like a matrix, right, you have important and urgent. Obviously, you do the important and urgent and you prioritize those. But then you get to urgent and not important. And a lot of people spend more time there than they spend in important but not urgent. And these are the things that often are driving you and leading you to your North Star. And so unfortunately, urgency takes over. And so how do you take that and take a step back, question the urgency perhaps, or perhaps think about how you want to manage your time? The way that young people get into trouble with this is because they typically say everything that falls on their desk they have to do, right? Because it's just part of doing the assignment. But I do think that, and I encourage my team right now, is to think about like, what are we doing? Just lay it all out and what's actually going to get us to impact. And let's deprioritize those that are taking a lot of time that might seem urgent, but aren't the biggest levers for change.
What advice would you have for young people that are interested in being social entrepreneurs?
I think that the way to really perform is not about getting everything done. It's about doing things in a way that's the most efficient to what you can do, but also using the resources around you. And so if you're head down and just doing it without asking for help, without asking for input, you might actually be putting more effort in than if you actually gave it some time and brought in somebody for whether it's thought partnership or truly helping you on some piece of it, or asking about a clarification on something else. So how do you start? There's so many resources online. There's this great new platform called Slingshot where you can just put in your inputs and it'll help you go through the actual steps of starting a company. So I think seeking out the resources that you need, whether it's people who can help mentor you through a fellowship program or joining a community. I'm sure there's meetups for entrepreneurs as well. And then seek out a little bit of legal support for your LLC piece or however you want to create your entity. But otherwise, it's just doing it. I think that, the steps of landscape analysis, customer discovery, all of those things are really important too. But if you have the drive and the passion and it's really part of your definition as your identity, just go ahead and do it. But a lot of success comes from when the problem consumes you and then you then find the solution, and maybe it's not the first solution, maybe it's the second solution or the third or 12th. As you're going through that, the only thing you have in mind is impact. Right? So you're coming up with the problem and you know where the impact is, and you're just iterating in between to get to the model that gets you to the impact. So first is starting off, what do you want to change? And then you kind of go backwards and figure out, are your activities doing it? If not, let's iterate and come back to that. So that impact piece is just what has to drive you.